her previous school experiences, the question I always ask is, when there's a problem, who do you go to? Who at the school can you approach to say, I have this need for my child that needs to be heard, and this is the person who I can sit down and have a conversation and answer it. And I think the same goes for teachers, right? It's, if there's a problem that I'm having, who can I have an honest discussion with about this need that I have to help the students in front of me, and who can give me an honest conversation? And the problem with the EAA, or many of the sort of charter school structures, is that that structure is really murky, and it's sort of couched in fear. So if you're a parent or a teacher, you want to have that conversation, in the back of your mind is my child, or am I going to be treated differently for raising a question or a concern? And that's a huge, huge problem. So that's the context of sort of the challenge now. It gets, I think, even more exacerbated and more deadly because the EAA is going to be able to authorize schools in the future. And so, are folks familiar with that term, authorize? I mean, I know it's got kicked around a little bit. Does someone want to sort of take a stab at saying, like, this is what it means to authorize? Yeah, so essentially, right, school districts can start other schools. Right? So the Detroit Public Schools, even before 2010, when a lot of this got introduced, they already had 9 or 10 charter schools. I don't know if you guys knew that, but the Detroit Public Schools started charter schools. So always been a little bit of a cap on who can start charter schools. There's always sort of internal agreement with the Detroit Public Schools that after 1994, they wouldn't start anymore. They started some African-centered schools, some other programs. They worked that out with the Detroit Federation of Teachers, and they decided, we're not going to authorize more schools because we're hemorrhaging students. And right now, through some other things, we're able to provide schooling needs through our programming. Well, the EAA is kind of a game changer because, right now they sort of absorbed 12 schools, but there's 3 that they absorbed that are now not even managed by the EAA. They're managed by private companies. And so when we're talking Trix, Stewart, and the third one always escapes my mind. Murphy. Yeah, so so in this context of EAA schools that we're talking about, there's this other 3 whose sort of governance structure we can't even penetrate because they're being run by EdVisions, which is a management company out of Ohio, and American Quality Schools.
But they dropped out, so it's now just advantages. So they're being run by corporations who run schools in other places. And so I think one of the things that, as we start to share stories about the challenges we're facing in the EAA now, and we sort of build power by telling those stories and coming up with sort of actions we can do so that we can find that person who can solve our problems. We also have to have sort of our head to the future a little bit, and that means what does it look like when even the structures we're kind of leaning on now to solve problems disappear. And so, if nothing else, when you leave today, right, I hope that you sort of ask that question if you're a parent or a teacher or you're here. If there's a problem in my school, who do I go to talk to? And if you can't answer it, that's the reason why we need to fight for things like the Detroit School Board, right? Because there's a structure that you can go to and testify to and say, this is my need, can you meet it for me? Right. So.
Thank you. Full disclosure, that's my son-in-law.